It's the start of a new week, and I am back with the first weekly edition of News Express on Africa Business Radio, exclusively brought to you by Business AM, Nigeria's fastest growing financial and business newspaper. I am Rachel Chijindu. Let's get into the pages this morning. And the top of the cover page now, a minister estimates solution to cost Nigeria $4 billion in annual spend. A UN body ready to support Nigeria stabilize its power supply. And below that story now, Analysts, one of economy unhinged as inflation bites, posts a 3-year high at 15.75%. Bears fangs on economy. Headline index majorly driven by rises in food and core inflation. Yes, we saw the inflation numbers for December released on Friday, and it wasn't looking good at all. We saw a sharp rise for the 36th consecutive month to 15.75% year on year, and that's reflecting nearly all of consumers and analyst expectation, many of whom had projected that the CPI will rise faster than had earlier been thought. Now, get more details of the number. That story continues on page 2 of Business AM. Moving over to the summary section now, with the headline carrying another gloomy data, this time for Sub-Saharan Africa. And that's Moody's negative SSA outlook. You want to find out that one on page 5. But despite all of the gloomy outlook, it was a profitable week on the NSC. Of course, that headline on page 10 carries numbers from last week's trading. Headline says NSE pulls stellar performance. And on page 25, that's in the energy, power and renewable section, we have NNPC to revamp infrastructure. Another headline still, Airtel awaits appeal court and the wheat importation albatross. Those are on pages 30 and 22 respectively. Now let's bring in the publisher Business AM, Philip Isakwa, to join us for conversations. Hello, Mr. Philip. Good morning.
Good morning. A good weekend.
Yes, hope you had a wonderful weekend as well. It wasn't the sweetest way to wrap up last week with inflation numbers, even though an average Nigerian would not be surprised with these numbers. I personally feel that, it could have been worse. I mean, commodity prices have skyrocketed, food prices specifically. In fact, that was a major driver for the December numbers. And so one would expect that the numbers for this month would be higher, with respect to that in the festive period. I'm talking about food prices just over this weekend. It was jaw-dropping, I must say. But what more can you tell us about the December data? And should we somehow expect a reaction from the market today? Or should we expect the bullish one to continue from last week into the new week?
Expect the inflation numbers to continue to rise. At least that's what analysts are telling us. They do not see anything happening to dampen that. The MPC will meet, which we'll talk about later on this week, and they will be flammoused by these numbers in terms of the decisions that they have to take. Now, inflation rose 86 basis points higher for December than November. What analysts have said or were expecting, came to pass, and we are even hearing that January could be higher, and that this trend will continue. Now, all of that's driven by a lot of factors that have come through. You talked about festive demand, in the market that drove inflation in December. That's true. Again, you can go back to the fact that 2020 wasn't really a good year because of the COVID-19 situation, So there were a lot of disruption as a result of COVID-19. Supply chains were disrupted. There were other things as well. Energy reforms being pushed by the federal government. Energy reforms in terms of pricing for petroleum products. We heard quite a lot about government withdrawing subsidy, and you saw a number of price rises fuel price rises twice, 3 times, or thereabouts in the 2 months at a stretch, and there's an expectation that will continue going forward, especially if you look at crude oil prices are rising gradually in the international oil market. People are saying that's good for the economy because it can lead to growth and that it can lead to a positive outlook at the end of the year for the country. But recall that Nigeria actually imports everything that it consumes as far as fuel is concerned. So when international oil prices go up, you expect and government has said it is no longer going to provide subsidies, for fuel, and so you will expect that what you will find is that government is going to adjust prices again. As oil prices rise globally, you'll find that that is going to reflect in terms of fuel prices.
Right.
And if that happens, you're going to have a whole lot of things happening in the supply chain, transportation, distribution cost. Obviously, manufacturers and producers, they pass that on to you and I and the general public. So we're going to pay more, and inflation driven by that is going to continue to happen. So you also have the situation around the dual devaluation of the naira. We talked about that some weeks back. We talked about the approach that the central bank is using in terms of not wanting to respond in one fell swoop, to the demand by the World Bank, to normalize the multiple exchange rates in the market, and we talked about the CBN approaching it in a gradual process, So, but you have that dual devaluation. So you've had devaluation, which affected the inflation numbers that came out. Okay, so specifically, festive season push on cost. For December it was 1.61% higher. And against November's 1.60%. People are already talking that as far as that is concerned, that full year average inflationary outcome as a result of this particular aspect of cost-driven inflation would be 13.25%. So you have food. You talked about it. You just mentioned this weekend how cost went up. Mind-blowing cost. You described it. But it's also food has been a major driver of this. Now, what are we looking at? 2020 had some level of floods, and then you have pockets of conflicts in food producing areas, and then amid the close down of borders, even though they announced the reopening of a few of them, but this has contributed to what you call a 16th consecutive rise in food inflation. December 2020, you had food alone, year on year, 19.56%. And people are saying it's going to go to 20%. That's the food basket alone. And it's a level last seen in 2017. That's quite, and then. Core inflation was also up 32 basis points to 11.37%. We mentioned that in the headline, in the sub-headlines that you read out. We talked about core inflation. 32 basis points up, signaling pressures from higher fuel prices, which I've also talked about, and the weaker naira. The exchange rate is also contributing its own, to these inflationary numbers that we are seeing coming from the National Bureau of Statistics. I said we can look at this inflationary pressure likely to persist. Some analysts are saying, despite the reopening of some of the borders, or even if they open all the borders as a result of coming under this African continental free trade area arrangement, sustained restriction on food imports, that is still going on, so if you don't have food, simple demand and supply, demand is higher than what you have available, prices are likely to go up, and that's what is happening, we have food shortages, and some food items have been importation of some food items have been completely banned,
yes,
or suspended for now, And then you have, I talked about higher oil prices that could spur further increases in fuel prices, as government has decided to not to continue with fuel, subsidizing fuel, So all of these, have come together, to produce what we are seeing in the inflationary numbers. And Rachel, this is likely to continue. We have talked about this a number of times, and you look at the numbers, coming out, food, we have to eat, and if you're not producing enough and you have conflict, if you had fraud like you had last year, and you had conflict in the food producing areas of the country,
yes,
that's going to show up somewhere, and it shows up in inflationary numbers.
It has, obviously. And we're expecting the MPC to key in these numbers in their decision-making during the meeting this week. Of course, you made mention, Business AM made mention of this on page 13 of the paper. What are analysts saying with regards to expectations from this meeting?
The central bank has always told the line. Let's put a global spin to this. If you notice what has happened across the global central banking space, whether you're talking about the United States, the Federal Reserve, or you're talking about the Central Bank, Bank of England, or you're talking about Japan, and so on and so forth. You have noticed that what they have done was to embrace what you call a looser monetary policy. Lowering interest rates across. I mean, you could go to England and get some money for almost free. Interest rates were tending towards negative in some
That's
European
right.
countries. And you could go almost like going there and getting money for free. But that was the response that those central banks took, with regards to monetary policy, with regards to the situation around their economies and global economy generally, But the Central Bank of Nigeria has been very, very cautious, So we had 11.5% the last time they met. Nobody's expecting anything different from what we saw. They expect that they will hold rates at 11.5%, because the central bank has no breathing space. We kept saying this, over and over again. The last time we wrote, there was a headline where we said, hands tied behind its back, MPC has no room to move. And that's what is going on.
And there's the question of, will they eventually run out of options with the way things are going?
Well, inflation, they have to keep an eye on inflation, price stability, exchange rate issues, it depends on how the economy is such that there aren't really much options for them, So the MPC will be looking at inflation numbers that have come out for December. They'll be looking at what's going to happen this early January, and then they'll be looking at the entire year. But they will be actually looking at what impact was the decision they made last time. How they will be looking at the numbers in terms of what impact that the better decision has made across the economy. But analysts are saying don't expect any change. COVID-19 is still out there. They'll be watching that closely. But again, oil is picking up, which seems positive for growth, also positive for a creation of a foreign exchange reserve. So there are some positive things that they could look onto, but they will be more cautious and looking at those negatives. Inflation, price stability. The central bank is on the watch out, and people are watching the central bank to see what it it will do in terms of stabilizing prices in this economy.
Of course, so all eyes on the MPC and their decision this week. But readers can also turn their attention to page 31. That's the technology and innovation segment of the paper. And we have good news there, maybe bright news for Nigeria, as the country ranks 85th in the best countries to set up an online business study. We're getting there, even if it's just 85th as at this moment. All right, let's wrap it up at this point. Mr. Philip Isakwa, thank you so much for doing this with me. Of course, I'll get back to you on Friday for the weekend edition of News Express. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Have a great day.
You too. And that was Philip Isakwa, the publisher, Business AM, Nigeria's fastest growing financial and business newspaper. The market analysis up next. Stay here.